Okay, cool. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Today we'll be covering off a security webinar. Unfortunately, we've had a last-minute kind of adjustment to the schedule, so the know before guest speaker will be unable to attend today. So we'll be looking to reschedule another follow-up event in the future where we'll include the speaker. So today we'll be focusing on the following topics. We've got the kind of introduction from myself. We'll talk a little bit briefly about the Ukraine and the Russian situation, which is causing a lot of drive around improving security. So that's kind of some of the recommendations that we'll make today around getting started and such. So that's what we'll cover off. We'll talk about a new addition from Microsoft 365 available in Microsoft 365 for Business, which is Defender for Business, which will improve the overall security functionality that we have available. We'll also talk about Defender for Endpoint as a whole. So there's a lot of great features in that, not just in the Defender plan, but also in the P1 and P2 functionality. We'll also talk around Azure Sentinel. So this is a tool that would allow us to export information outside of Office 365 and into a logging system. So that can be handy for regulated industries. It can also be handy if you need to keep your logging in 365 for a much longer time than the default 30 or 90 days. We'll also talk a bit about our managed security service. So this is how we can help organizations that are looking to keep on top of security in Intune. And then at the end, we'll have some time for the Q&A session. Obviously, the session today will be shorter than planned with the absence of the know before side of things. But if you have any questions, then ask them as we're going through and we can answer those at the end. We'll obviously record the session and that will be sent out after as an email. And that can then be shared with any co-workers and such that you would like to join. So obviously the situation in Russia, the National Cybersecurity Center has sent out some advisories that your organizations should be looking to bolster their defenses. So we've included the link here that you can go review with the recommendations. But what we tend to see is that alongside a situation, whether it's a political situation or the Ukraine war, that there is a historical pattern of cyber attacks post in this. So there will be an increased threat from Russia and other countries in which they'll be kind of trying to disrupt the economy, disrupt businesses. So there would be a recommendation from the National Cybersecurity Center to improve your security posture. We'll talk a little bit on the next slide about what you can do, some quick wins from that. But we have already seen that there's been organizations hacked. An example of that is Funky Pigeon, which is a WH Smith subsidiary. So it's definitely a good time to review what you're doing from a security perspective and ensure that you're doing everything that you can. The simple proactive steps that we recommend for all of our customers. First of all, ensuring that multi-factor authentication is enabled for all users. There is no real better defense at the moment than switching this on. It will stop most of the attacks that you can receive. So if one of your user clicks a phishing link, multi-factor authentication can really prevent that. For a lot of our customers, or for all of our customers, they have MFA enabled and switched on. But we can also use a product which is available as part of Microsoft 365 Business Premium, conditional access, to reduce some of the overheads of that. So if you're concerned that MFA will become a burden, an example of this might be you have a factory floor user, he may not want to use his personal device, or he may not even be allowed a personal device on the factory floor, then switching MFA on for that user could become an admin burden, an overhead that you guys would have to counter for. So what conditional access allows you to do is put rules in place. So rather than having MFA enabled for that user, we could put a conditional access policy for a factory floor user that blocks all access unless they're coming from a trusted IP address. So we enable MFA for all of our users, but we then use conditional access to basically bypass it in situations that we know would be safe. So that could be a trusted location. It could be a trusted device. So if we've issued a laptop to the users, we know that that's going to be secure because it has Intune and Defender for Endpoint on it. So this MFA if you're kind of holding back on switching that on because you think it's going to cause you headaches, definitely get in touch and we can talk around conditional access and how that can alleviate concerns and make sure that that is enabled for everybody. The second one is obviously managing endpoints. There's lots of tools available, especially in Microsoft 365 Business Premium. So if you don't have antivirus or you haven't got any anti-malware in place at the moment, then Defender for Endpoint included in Business Premium will give you that. So again, we'd recommend that that's switched on. We should also recommend that patching is done, and also that bring your own devices are protected as well. So this is people accessing work data on their iOS devices and such. So I guess from that perspective, what we have seen with a lot of organizations who've started off with Office 365 is they've perhaps purchased an antivirus, but they're not 100% sure whether they're installing it on every device. They're not checking it. The device might not be reporting if it has a virus, so it's reliant on the user telling people. So as we talk around Defender for Business, this will be kind of how we can take that administrative side away and make sure that everybody has antivirus and that it's reporting centrally. We'd also recommend that you're backing up all your systems and testing them. We've seen customers that have had backup systems in place, but they've never been tested. And when they actually come down to using them, they find that they're not working properly. So it would be a real recommendation that if you are backing up systems, now is a good time to actually test those backups, make sure you can recover your data. And Microsoft, of course, recommend that Microsoft 365 is backed up as well. You can't just rely on the fact that Microsoft 365 is in many data centers. We do need to kind of factor in that, as a rule of thumb, anything deleted in 365, if it hasn't been noticed for 90 days, you've then lost that data forever. So the backup is key to making sure that you can recover that. Also, there's tools available in Business Premium, Advanced Threat Protection being one of those that can reduce the phishing attempts on users, but also kind of giving your users training is a kind of great way of moving forward. Give them some indication of what a typical phishing email would look like, so they're aware of the steps that they can take to protect themselves and not click on links they shouldn't. All of our customers, we kind of work towards Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. If you're struggling to have a framework around what settings you should deploy, what best practice looks like, then Cyber Essentials, which you can get started with a free questionnaire, will talk you through the basics of, have you got MFA enabled? Have you got antivirus switched on? So by going through that free questionnaire, it'll start to uncover some of the issues that you potentially have in your environment. And you can then move towards a paid certification. We use a third party called Protos. And that third party can then actually validate in a Cyber Essentials certification that those steps you have done those steps. And a Cyber Essentials Plus is the next level, which allows you to go through a much more rigid process with that certification body to check and run some software to see how your current systems are used. So often when we're talking to our customers, they want to implement security, but they don't have a baseline of what they should be doing, and Cyber Essentials is a great way to do that. Of course, the licenses, Microsoft 365 Business Premium and E3, can assist with all of this. So if you have this license, it will enable you to do everything that's described above, including the example of the conditional access policies. If you don't have Microsoft 365 Business Premium and you're currently on one of the other plans like Business Standard, I would definitely consider, in the current situation, upgrading and get in touch and we can talk you through what's involved with that. So the first kind of piece is to talk about Defender for Endpoint. So quite a busy slide here, but Microsoft have recently released Defender for Business. The Defender for Business basically is a new product that's available. It's included for free in the Microsoft 365 Business Premium license. You may be kind of saying, actually, we already had an antivirus previously, which was included in Windows. However, what that did not do is it did not give us some of the kind of next generation functionality. So what Defender for Business is going to add above and beyond what you already had would be the ability to protect Windows 10 devices, Android devices, iOS, macOS. So it's kind of expanding the tools that can actually be protected. It's also given us some new stuff, so we can get some next generation scanning, some attack surface reduction, automated fixing of problems, and more importantly, centralized management. A lot of the free antiviruses that you go out and purchase don't have centralized management, which means that it relies on your users telling you that they have an antivirus problem. They'd have to kind of see the message and notify you. The centralized management means that you as an IT department or an MSP who's managing your environment would actually be alerted on all of those devices and they can do something about it. It's also possible to purchase Defender for Endpoint Plan 1. So if you're not currently on Business Premium or you're on an Office 365 subscription, for example, then the Defender for Endpoint Plan 1 can be upgraded. You can purchase that as a separate SKU. And then finally, we have another product called Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. So this isn't included for free in the SKUs, but for a cost of £3.90, what it does do is it includes all of the additional functionality. So we have the ability to do some web filtering. I'll show you some examples of this additional functionality later in the slides. But effectively, it's giving us more functionality. And for most of our customers, we're suggesting that they go down the Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 because of the enhanced protection that it offers. The other thing that we have with this is we have the ability to install it on Windows Server devices and Linux devices. So if you have servers that you're looking to manage and monitor, then we can deploy Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 on a Windows server or a Linux-based system as well. So it's not just for your Windows devices. This platform could be your one-stop solution for antivirus moving forward. So that's the kind of availability, the licenses. So in terms of the Defender for Business, just as a quick overview of what this is going to give you. So the first piece is that obviously it's included in the Microsoft 365 Business Premium plan. So you'll get this already. If customers don't have our Defender for Endpoint Plan 2 already, over the coming months, they will get the Microsoft 365 Defender for Business added automatically. What it does offer is enhanced protection above and beyond Windows 10, and it should be looking to replace traditional antivirus. So if you've got a traditional antivirus product and you're looking to save costs or improve functionality, then the Defender for Business would be a great starting point to do so. It also allows an MSP to look at a centralized management. So we have a product called Microsoft 365 Lighthouse. And what that does is allows an MSP to basically see an overview of all of the devices that they're currently looking after on behalf of their customers, and basically then action and fix those things. So an MSP that's working in this way can see all of their customers, how many devices are not compliant, and any potential issues. So it's not reliant then on your MSPs going individually into every single customer's tenant. It means that we can centrally monitor and manage all of the devices and all of the risks and be on top of what we're looking to do. So Valto's service offering is fundamentally using this platform. So Defender for Endpoint P2, I kind of said that this is the product that we recommend for most of our customers. Now, the reason why is it can give us a lot more information over the Defender for Business plan. So what you can see here is that we've got this device inventory, and it's currently indicating exposure levels that are on those devices and any health state that we have associated with them. So what this is doing is it's actually scanning the device for any known risks that are installed. So you may install Zoom that hasn't been patched or maintained or updated for a period of time. What this is going to allow us to do is basically, it's going to, using Microsoft's data center and Microsoft's new threat analytics, they're constantly monitoring the software environment and saying, right, Zoom has a known risk, therefore the exposure level needs to be increased. So as you guys are installing software, if it's not being patched, maintained, or if there's a 0-day problem that's just been released, then this will basically flag straight away that there's an issue. It can alert your IT team. It could also alert your IT support team that there's an exposure level that needs to be actioned and needs to be fixed. So very intuitive from this side. It's scanning that software and identifying known risks. This is an example of where we can see that software. So it's not just focused on the Microsoft technology, it's also focused on other pieces of software. So we might have Citrix Receiver, Cisco AnyConnect. They will have known risks that are associated with them, and it can show the devices that are currently exposed to that risk, and it gives you an impact score based on that. So if we're not updating and we're not fixing, we're not patching these, and people are using the old versions of the products, then obviously your overall score would be higher. What it means as a IT provider is that we can actually monitor these risks and then action them and make sure that we're updating and patching the software and people aren't using old pieces of technology with problems. The other thing is that we can also enable web content filtering. So historically, this has been a tool that's been available in things like Umbrella, where what we can do is prevent users from going to websites that they shouldn't. It could also be used to block things like crypto miners. So effectively what we can do is we can decide the blocked categories, whether that's gambling, other kind of stuff within here, and we can then block the user from going to those sites and alert if users are frequently trying to do things like crypto miners. So the experience that a user would see is that I've got this website here called guns.com. And what the guns.com is obviously a website that's not available. So it's now come up with this content is blocked. So it's a great way of making sure that those users' devices, if they're working from home, we can protect them and make sure that they're not going onto sites they shouldn't. And it's not necessarily that they're actually visiting them themselves. It could be that malware and other processes in the background are trying to load these sites up. So that's some of the functionality that we have in the Defender for Endpoint Plan 2. I can see that there's been a question posted in here. So the question is, do we need to buy Endpoint Plan 2 for all script subscriptions to be able to install it on one server, or does just one subscription need the additional license? So in that scenario, you can just buy it one-off. So if you just wanted to install Endpoint Plan 2 on one of your servers, then you could just go ahead and buy one license and then add that to the server. You don't need to get your whole infrastructure purchased with Endpoint Plan 2. It's a selection of which devices need it, basically. Okay, so the next product that we have is a product called Azure Sentinel. So typically the logs that are kept in Microsoft 365 are kept for a period of 90 days. So there's certain industries like financial industries where they're regulated and they need to keep that data for a lot longer. And it may also be for your own peace of mind that you'd like to keep that data. So what Azure Sentinel allows us to do is inject all of that data into a secondary source. We can connect this to different data connections. So it includes other solutions like Barracuda. We can connect it to Office 365, as you can see here. And Microsoft then present a number of known templates that we'd be able to search within this list. So they provide a section which allows you to kind of say, here's some of the known risks within the Office 365 side of things. So very much Azure Sentinel is giving us that capability of ingesting all those logs into a third-party system, but then being able to actually create alerts on that. So if a user's downloading too much data, or perhaps if there's been an abnormal sign-in on that account. So it's very, very comprehensive in the functionality that it provides. And what we're using this for is the next service in here, which is our Valto Managed security support. So we're ingesting for our customers all of that data from their Office 365 login data, and then we're creating alerts and actions that happen on the back of this. So our managed security support is basically kind of looking at the current market situation. We're seeing a lot of organizations who've deployed Microsoft 365 and Intune and some of the security settings, However, what we see in terms of a setup issue is that they're perhaps setting up the incorrect policies. There's lots of different ways to set up Intune and the security settings within 365, and it's not also always the best way to do it. We also see a lot of outdated policies. So the available policies in Intune change on a weekly or monthly basis. If you're not keeping on top of your policies and improving the best practices, then you're going to start to have those setup issues. So many organizations see the security compliance and Intune as a one-time setup, whereas actually what it does need is that the policies need to be improved on a monthly basis. Microsoft are releasing new baselines for security. So this kind of process that we're implementing is to help organizations keep on top of those policies, improve them, make sure that there's a process to review that. You can see here, this is a typical example of an Intune client. So there's lots of client app failures, there's lots of errors, there's lots of devices not in compliance. And this is kind of what we expect to see with a 365 tenant. They've been through that process to set up Intune and get everything into a good position. But over time, it's kind of not been maintained. It's not kept on top of. So those devices start to fall out of compliance. You can see on the right-hand side, there's 52 open alerts over the last 30 days, many of which haven't been investigated or looked at. There's 6 users at risk. If you guys go into your own 365 tenants and look at these settings, you'll likely see something similar to this. It requires a lot of work to keep on top of, manage and maintain. And if you don't do these steps, it'll suddenly grow out of control. So the challenges that we can see here is that the devices are coming out of compliance. There's conflicts with the policies. There's lots of alerts that aren't being updated. People aren't sure of the best practices that should be deployed. Testing and maintaining those policies is important. We've had customers approach us where they've made one change to a Intune policy that's then broken BitLocker across their whole environment. So it's kind of making sure that those policies are tested and rolled out in a way that they're not going to affect your users. And the other challenge that people kind of flag with us is that there's so many portals that they don't know where the alerts are. They don't know what they should be looking at. So it's difficult for them to keep on top of because it's always evolving and they've got other jobs to do. So we've offered a proactive service for customers where we can look after their Microsoft 365 environment on their behalf. So the first stage is looking at the strategy and planning. This is reviewing your current Intune setup, going through the kind of updates that are required from a compliance and configuration perspective, talking through all the various alerts that are available within 365, and then making sure that they're applicable. They're not just bombarding you with loads, but tweaking those so that they are alerting when you need to. We also then provide monthly and quarterly reviews of the policies and obviously help organizations who are looking to replace group policies with Intune. We then provide frequent management, so this is keeping on top of the portals, doing quarterly reviews, and implementing Sentinel, so we can log that data and provide alerts. So in terms of what the service looks like, you can see that it's a 3-tiered approach. We have a bronze, silver, gold package, and depending on which package an organization would go for, would give them an improved SLA, but also improved functionality. So you can see that with the silver package, which is our most popular one, we include an annual security harden review. We review all of the portals and we're going through all the different checks and alerts that are available. So this would be a centralized service in which we're looking after your whole Intune and 365 security side of things, and providing you ongoing advice. The gold one also allows us to plug the Azure Sentinel into third-party products as well. So if you're looking to implement things like Barracuda or other services within there, that's what we're able to do. So I think quite a short webinar today, as our guest speaker isn't available. So we will kind of reach out in the future with a second update. But we do have another presentation from Dougie coming in the next couple of weeks. So on the 10th of May, we'll be presenting how to automate document and record labeling with a product called SharePoint Syntax. So this is a real clever piece of technology that uses some AI and machine learning to help you kind of classify and like label your documents. So that's something that we'll send out an invitation for shortly. And then we've kind of got time now for any questions at the end of this. So if you have any questions, please post them into the thread, and we're more than happy to answer those. Okay, doesn't look like there's any questions today, so we can look to wrap up that. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining, and we'll hope to see you in the future. And if you need any help, please get in touch. Thank you.